Royaltv, 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 Royal24.
adeegyada Royaltv
ku xayeysiiso
kobci ganacsigaaga
barnaamijyo iyo warar tayo leh
iyo dhammaan adeegyada aad uga baahan tahay Royaltv
Royaltv,
untaya cabdayn kara
Royaltv,
hadal reeban yaan odhan
haddaba nagala soo xiriir telefoonada iyo emailada shaashada ku qoran
cabdayn kara
Royaltv,
hadal reeban yaan odhan
Royaltv wehelkaaga mar kasta iyo meel kasta
Royal24.
وما تبكى دوره حسوب له مباهني حارنتي دبكيني وما تبكى دوره حسوب له مباهني إلهي كعبسدو
صومراي حق إلهي كعبسدو
حرية دينت كيو
صومراي حرية دينت كيو
حق إلهي كعبسدو
صومراي حق إلهي كعبسدو
حرية دينت كيو حجية حجية قارنكو
حجية صومراي حجية قارنكو
حجية قارنكو
حجية صومراي حجية قارنكو
حماري نبت حماري نبت حماري نبت حماري نبت
حاسبنا وهاجمين
to help the Somali people to reclaim their country. And today, I think we are seeing the beginnings of a new future for Somalia. Extremism is in retreat. AMISOM, together with Somali and Ethiopian forces, have driven al-Shabaab out of town after town. Piracy attacks are down by 80%, with no vessel attacked so far this year. Government is moving ahead. Under the guidance of the UN and the African Union and IGAD, the transitional government that lasted 8 years has ended, and now there is a proper, legitimate and federal government in its place. And Somalia doesn't just have a new president, but also a new parliament chosen by representatives of all clans. The international community has kept the promises that we made last year. The UN Security Council resolution extended the mandate of African Union forces beyond Mogadishu and increased their numbers. Mauritius and the Seychelles have taken pirates for prosecutions, and 59 convicted pirates have been transferred to prisons in Somaliland and Puntland. And we're working together relentlessly to disrupt the travel and the financing of terrorists in the region. But the transformation in Somalia that we've seen has not happened just because 50 countries sat round a room and a table like this in London last year and somehow decided Somalia's future. This change has happened because of the vision of President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud and his team, and because of the strength and courage of the Somali people in beginning the long and difficult task of rebuilding their country from the bottom up. But for all the progress that we've seen, huge challenges lie ahead. Somalia still faces desperate poverty. Over 200,000 children under 5 are acutely malnourished, and just under half of all Somalis live on less than $1 a day. Despite the gains made against al-Shabaab, the recent tragic and despicable attacks in Mogadishu, including one just last weekend, remind us how much work there's still to do in the fight against terrorism and extremism. Now, these challenges are not just issues for Somalia. They matter for Britain too, and for the whole international community. Why? Because when young minds are poisoned by radicalism and they go on to export terrorism and extremism, the security of the whole world, including people here in Britain, is at stake. And to anyone who says this isn't a priority or we can't afford to deal with it, I would say that is what we've done in the past, and look where it has got us: terrorism and mass migration. We made that mistake in the past, not just in the Horn of Africa, but also in Afghanistan in the 1990s. We must not make that mistake again. Today, nearly 2/3 of Somalis are under 25. But most young people don't join al-Shabaab because they believe in its perverted version of Islamist ideology. They do it because they are desperate for a few dollars and a mobile phone. So helping young Somalis to escape grinding poverty is not just vital for the future of Somalia, it's also the best antidote to the extremism that threatens us all. Somalis make a great contribution to our country here in the UK, and their remittances play a valuable role in Somalia. But many would like to return to rebuild their own country. We need to make it safe for them to do just that. Now let me turn to how I hope we can do that today. Supporting a new future for Somalia starts with the humanitarian relief that is so vital in alleviating some of the worst poverty anywhere on earth. I'm pleased that Britain is playing a leading role and saving lives and helping Somalis build resilience to future crises. And I hope others will follow. But Somalia's new future depends on more than humanitarian assistance. It's about the Somali government providing the security, the stability and services that are essential for people to secure jobs, to start new businesses, and to provide for their families. That means supporting what I've called the golden thread of development, the set of key conditions that are essential for growth all over the world. These encompass basic security for all, including the protection of women against sexual violence. That means a military that is effective and respects human rights. It means a police force that people run towards, not away from. And it means a justice system that is fair, dependable, and accessible to all who need it. It requires a government that is transparent and accountable in its use of resources, and inclusive and representative of all parts of society. President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud is today setting out his plans in each of these areas, and I hope that as an international community, we can get right behind him. First, I hope that together we can back a long-term security plan to end al-Shabaab's reign of terror forever. I'm pleased that Britain will commit £10 million to help develop Somalia's armed forces and £14.5 million to double the number of police officers and to train judges and lawyers. Britain will also support the new maritime strategy, enabling full radio connection all along the entire coastline for the first time in 20 years. I hope that others here today will contribute too, and that countries in the region will stay the course and work with Somalia while it builds up its own forces. Second, we need to help Somalia develop a transparent and accountable government with an honest and accurate budget so that it can access the vital finance it needs to deal with its debts and to provide services to her people. Under the previous government, Somalia struggled with endemic corruption, so I very much welcome the commitment to public accountability that the President has made and the plan he's setting out here at this conference. Tomorrow we'll see a major international trade and investment conference with companies from all over the world looking at Somalia as a place to do business. But for investment to flow and for jobs to be created, people need to know where their resources are going. The international community must send a strong signal to the international financial institutions about the need to follow the World Bank's lead and help Somalia to deal with its debts and to access the vital finance that it needs. And I will seek support for this from my G8 partners when we meet at Loch Erne in Northern Ireland next month. Third, we must support the new Somalian administration as it takes the next steps in delivering a fully federal government in which everyone has a stake and a voice. That means continuing the process of rebuilding the Somali state in an inclusive way with all the regions of Somalia around the table. It means reaching beyond Mogadishu so all parts of the country see a demonstrable benefit from the new government and moving towards the ultimate goal of national elections in 2016, which we discussed this morning. And while Somalia must focus relentlessly on fighting terrorism, it will not bring its people together through military might alone. So there will need to be an opportunity for those who are willing to reject violence and to turn away from al-Shabaab to join the political process. Mr. President, I know that you face one of the most difficult tasks of any leader anywhere in the world, but it's only by bringing the people of your country together and by delivering the security, stability and services essential for jobs and growth that you can deliver the new future for Somalia that is within your grasp. For our part, let me assure you, we as your friends and partners will stand with you as you rebuild your country. We know that Somalia's future will be shaped by Somalia and with Somalia. This is not something being done to Somalia. Today, you're setting out your plans for your country. Our task is clear, to get behind you and your plans. That is what we will do. In her book entitled Keeping Hope Alive, Dr. Hawa Abdi, the physician and Nobel Peace Prize nominee, wrote about her time in the midst of Somalia's darkest hours. She said, "Hope is what remains as we wait for peace, even as we bleed and we starve. It may be that right now we are living for hope." Today, after 2 decades of bloodshed and some of the worst poverty on earth, hope is alive in Somalia. Now it's time to fulfill that hope for the people of Somalia. That is what they've been living for and waiting for, and we must not let them down. Thank you very much indeed, and I'd now like to introduce the President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. A few weeks ago, I planted a young sapling tree in the gardens at Villa Somalia in Mogadishu to raise the issue of deforestation. And it got me thinking, what does a young sapling need for it to grow into a strong, healthy tree? It needs to be supported with a strong stake, it needs to be watered and fed, and it needs to be protected from animals that try to eat it, so it is soft bark and kill it. And so it's with this young sapling we have all planted together, call it Somalia. We need support, we need assistance and investment, and we need protection from those who try to knock us over. The first period of growth is always the most hazardous, where the most support and protection is needed. But as the bow thickens and strengthens, the tree needs less and less support until finally it stands broad and tall and strong, all on its own. My vision for a federal Somalia at peace with itself and its neighbors, and which poses no threat to the world, a Somalia with a resurgent economy, thriving small and medium-sized business ventures, and sustainable employment so that families are properly provided for. A Somalia with values of kindness, respect, and human rights, all underpinned by an education system that harnesses our intellectual spirit. So we are here today to begin a 4-year process that must begin with a considerable investment and support, but which I hope will finish with very little. Heads of states and governments, excellencies, ambassadors, special representatives, honored guests, the Prime Minister and I welcome you to the second Somalia Conference in London. Mr. Prime Minister, I wholeheartedly thank you and your government for your personal engagement in shaping our future and for your support in hosting this great conference. I particularly congratulate you for reopening your embassy on our soil in Mogadishu after more than 2 decades' absence. People may ask why Somalia matters at this time, but there is a huge amount at stake right now. The future of our country, the security of the region and the world at large, and the removal of the piracy stranglehold on the Gulf of Aden. I know you all understand this, and I fully appreciate the political capital being invested to support Somalia. Since the last meeting held here in London more than a year ago, more has been achieved than anyone would have ever imagined. In just 1 year, the cornerstone of a new Somalia have been successfully and peacefully laid down. The political transition has ended, and I stand here as the elected president of a sovereign nation with an elected speaker leading a new parliament, representative of all the regions and all the clans and communities, and with a legitimate and effective government, delivering 6-pillar policy framework, the foundations of a new beginning in Somalia. Progress has defied the skeptics. Somalia has rejoined the world of communities. Under my leadership, we offer the world a legitimate partner you can trust, hard at work to deliver an integrated national security plan, economic reform, and a new financial management system, rule of law and judicial reform, an environment conducive to commercial growth. We are achieving real progress week by week, month by month, but challenges do remain. Despite being militarily defeated, Al-Shabaab have melted into the society and began a new phase of insurgency and a campaign of terror, an experience I know that Great Britain comprehends as well as any other. Our constitution is only partially complete. Piracy must come to an end. Millions of Somalis still live in desperate conditions as refugees in neighboring countries and as internally displaced persons in their own country. And we lack developed government institutions, schools, hospitals, roads, sanitation, and other basic services. As you will hear over the coming hours, however, we came to London to share with you our detailed plans to address these challenges. We are building our armed forces. We are restructuring and developing our police force. We are reforming our justice sector. And we are revolutionizing our public finance management systems. We are driving Somalia from emergency to recovery and from recovery to development and reconstruction. Ultimately, however, It will be a Somali-owned solution that will fix Somalia. But no country has ever recovered from such social and economic collapse without the help of the world. And so, in partnership with our endeavors, we respectfully ask for your total and unflinching commitment, partnership, and support to Somalia. We hope that you will agree how you can support the implementation of our plans and put an end to our dependence on the international community. The federal government of Somalia has laid down the foundations for a new public finance management mechanism, which we believe will enable our donors to agree funding arrangements with the confidence that funds will reach their intended recipients. The progress that has been made in Somalia over the past 3 years would not have been possible without the courageous support of IGAD, the African Union, our brothers and sisters in AMISOM, and the ultimate sacrifice made by many brave African soldiers. We owe to it their memory to ensure that we do not take one single step backwards. The progress that has been made in Somalia over the past 3 years would also not have been possible without the committed support of the United Nations, the United States, the United Kingdom, and the European Union. We owe it to the publics who contribute to these governments and institutions to see this process through a conclusive conclusion. We are also indebted to the kindness and generosity of countries like Turkey, Norway, the Arab League, member states, and other countries. Your assistance over the past few years has spread hope and belief among our people. We welcome ANSOM, the new United Nations mission in Somalia, and we are grateful for the consultations offered in agreeing both the mandate and the appointment of the new SRSG in Somalia. We congratulate His Excellency Mr. Nicholas K. on his appointment as the new SRSG. We are looking forward to receiving him and the new UN mission in Mogadishu soon. I wish to thank Ambassador Mahiga, the outgoing SRSG, for his relentless and determined effort in leading the design of the roadmap and seeing the transition through. Our best wishes and tribute go to him. The people of Somalia are eternally grateful. Winning the war in Somalia has been proven. Winning the peace in Somalia will take patience and great skills. We are at a critical junction. The time is now. We have little time today and lots to achieve. All of us, especially those in the background who have worked so hard to make this conference happen, will want to depart with a real sense of progress. I thank you all for coming and for your dedicated support for Somalia. Together, we can make Somalia strong again. A tree standing tall in the African bush with deep roots binding it securely to its region and offering shade and protection to its people as they rebuild their lives. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And we're now going to hear from the President of Ethiopia. Sorry, Prime Minister of Ethiopia.
Excellency, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Excellency, President of the Federal Republic of Somalia, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to express my heartfelt appreciation to the warm and friendly welcome accorded to my delegation in the great city of London. Let me also take this opportunity to express my gratitude on behalf of my government and that of IGAD to the initiative made by His Excellency David Cameron to organize this gathering for the second time in as many years with a view to finding lasting solutions to a region and a country that has been bedeviled by conflict for decades on end. This is commendable indeed in the light of the great contribution that last year's London conference had in the successful completion of the roadmap that led to the establishment of the current legitimate federal government in Mogadishu. It's my hope and expectation that today's deliberation will also go some way in expediting the overall institutional building process that is underway in Somalia at the behest of the federal government, as well as in bringing the international community's pressure and support to bear on the monumental task of finding lasting peace and stability, not just in Somalia, but also throughout the region as a whole. Excellencies, this conference is very important for a number of reasons. First and foremost, it will point the ways and means of building on the success that the Somali process has registered so far, and to help improve the many shortfalls that still confront all stakeholders in the region. More importantly, it will help further consolidate the federal government's own strategies and policies to expedite the state building process it has already undertaken. In this regard, the slow process of implementing the six-pillar strategy of the government will hopefully gather new momentum. The efforts to create a security apparatus that is inclusive and fully representative of the cross-section of the Somali population needs to be jump-started if the gains that have been made so far are to be further consolidated. Al-Shabaab is still a threat to peace and security, and it is thus imperative that we further enhance our concerted effort. We shall not therefore lose sight of our strategic mission, which is uprooting Al-Shabaab. Any difference among stakeholders is of secondary importance in the context of the dangerous enemy we face. What happened in Arusha only the other day by terrorists is a stark reminder of the real and the present danger such extremists, Al-Shabaab or any other, pose to our peace and stability, as well as to the lives and prosperity of our citizens. In fact, what happened in Arusha could as well have happened in Addis Ababa or Nairobi or even in London. That's, of course, one reason why we in the neighborhood have been paying tremendous sacrifices in our fight against Al-Shabaab in Somalia and beyond. This conference will also hopefully contribute and further inform the efforts underway to find ways to expedite the process of establishing functioning state institutions, both at the center as well as in the peripheries. The capacity of the federal institutions to deliver basic services to citizens leaves so much to be desired, and as such, maximum effort needs to be exerted to work on this particular deficit if we are to have a Somali population that could place confidence in its own institutions' capacity to deliver services. This is doubly important mainly because this will deny alternative sources of authority in Somalia, both malign and benign, the opportunity to challenge the legitimacy and authority of the federal authorities in Mogadishu. There is an urgent need for building functional government structure and institutions at all levels for the delivery of basic services. Establishment of local and regional administrations and the stabilization of such regions require urgent and coordinated efforts to further isolate Al-Shabaab and build confidence of the Somali people in the future of their own country. There are still millions internally displaced persons and refugees awaiting their return home and rehabilitation. We recognize that the federal government of Somalia is doing its level best to mitigate this challenge, but the magnitude of the problem demands a coordinated effort of all stakeholders. The efforts to establish credible and regional administrations that will serve as the building blocks of a functioning federal Somalia must be given further impetus. It's my hope and expectation that this conference will contribute to the regional efforts aimed at the resolution of the current impasse in some parts of Somalia. All along, primacy should be given to the principles enunciated by IGAD, namely leadership of the government of the Federal Republic of Somalia in the process, respect of the provisional constitutions by all stakeholders, all-inclusive consultative process with the people of Somalia, supportive role of IGAD based on its priorities of the Somali government, and fighting the Al-Shabaab as a primary focus of the Somali government, AMISOM, regional and international partners, and further request to the Somali federal government to align its priorities with the aforementioned agreed 5 principles. Excellencies, while the conference will certainly have contribution in helping the Somali stakeholders move forward in their effort to resolve their problems, it's however the role of the Somalis themselves that does not and should carry the most weight. It is important to understand that outsiders cannot substitute for the Somalis in all the efforts to resolve the current impasse among the many actors within Somalia. We can and should only play a facilitating and monitoring role in the entire process. It is imperative that the process of stabilization be Somali-owned and Somali-led. Having said that, however, there are very many advantages that this conference could help generate. First, this will create a valuable opportunity to harmonize the international community's efforts to support the political process in Somalia and to avoid the rather counterproductive proliferation of initiatives from different quarters, however well-intentioned. Second, it will help mobilize the resources necessary to build the capacity of Somali state institutions to deliver services to citizens, the absence of which could ultimately erode the legitimate authority that the government wields. In this regard, the international community's support for strengthening the Somali security apparatus should be given top priority. But more importantly, this conference will help in reorienting the focus of the international community's support from its heavy focus on security to a long-term rebuilding and reconstruction of the country. In this regard, the international community should go beyond promises and do everything it can to back words with action on the ground. The enterprising people of Somalia deserve all the help we can provide in order to put their house together. Excellencies, it's not my intention to talk at length about the advantage of having a Somali at peace with itself and the nation, with the institutional capacity to take care of the needs of its citizens in many, if not all aspects of their lives. Suffice it to say that a vibrant, functioning, and peaceful Somalia means the difference between the series of debilitating crises that characterize the region and an economically integrated region that can contribute to global development as well as international peace and stability. We as neighbors are more than eager to close the chapter of conflict that has sapped most of our resources and imperiled our resources for far too long, and open a new one where the issue of peace and security goes to the back burner and economic cooperation and development comes at the center stage. Let me therefore conclude by reiterating the commitment of my government and that of IGAD to contribute their share in this noble endeavor and our readiness to join hands with our partners in the international community. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. I thank the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, and I'll now give the floor to President Museveni of Uganda.
The Right Honorable Prime Minister Cameron, the head of the African Union, Prime Minister of Ethiopia, the President of the Republic of Somalia, Excellencies, heads of state, and heads of delegations, ladies and gentlemen. In the Christian religion, we talk of the Holy Trinity, God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. Similarly, we also need to talk of the peace trinity by bringing together the internal stakeholders, the respective regions, and the international community. In the case of Somalia, we have moved well through the Somali actors agreeing to form a national government in Nairobi in 2004, and the Somalis electing a new parliament and president last September, the region creating AMISOM, and the international community giving financial and intelligence support. This trinity has been able to defeat Al-Shabaab in Mogadishu, Kismayu, Afgoy, Baidawa, Malka, Johal, etc. However, Al-Shabaab is not eliminated from the whole of Somalia. They still maintain rural bases from where they operate undisturbed, away from the regional and the Somali government forces. It is from those rural areas that they infiltrate into the towns and kill people. This is not good. Anybody who kills people must be held accountable. We have shared our views with the President of Somalia. In our view, the following is needed. Number one, rapidly training the new officer corps of the Somali Army, comprised of young Somalis with advanced level secondary education and above, so that the soldiers we have been training with the European Union have leadership. Uganda is ready to train any number of officer cadets that Somalia.
inta kadib ayaa waxaan wax ka weydiinay bal waxyaabihii ugu muhiimsanaa ee looga hadlayay shirkii maanta afayeenka dawladda injineer Yariso waxaad naga warbixisaa bal waxyaabihii ugu muhiimsanaa ee shirkan maanta looga hadlay.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. marka hore Royaltv aad iyo aad baan u mahadcelinayaa sidaad ummadda Soomaaliyeed uga qabtirtaan warbaahinta. waa soo sheegtay maanta waxa halkan ka socday shir ay dawladda Ingiriisku fududeysay isla markaana oo shir gudoominayay madaxweynaha Jamhuuriyadda Federaalka Soomaaliya mudane Xasan Sheekh Maxamuud iyo ra'iisul wasaaraha dalkan Ingiriiska. ujeedada shirku waxay ahayd dawladda Soomaaliya inay soo bandhigto qorshayaasha ay doonayso inay dalka uga saarto marxaladaha hadda ku jiro amni iyo nabadgelyo kala dambeynna loo heli lahaa. qorshayaasha marka dawladdu ay soo bandhigto waxa kamid ahaa qorshaha amniga oo dawladdu ay doonayso in ciidankii Soomaaliyeed dib loo yagleelo loo tayeeyo hay'adihii amnigana dib loo dhiso si ay Soomaalidu isugu filnaadaan oo ay amnigooda iyaga u sugtaan. waa dareemi karnaa ciidamada ajnabiga waa temporary ma noqon karaan kuwa xal u hela Soomaalida iyada laga rabaa inay xal keenso. madaxweyne Xasan Sheekh aad iyo aad buu arintaas maaragtay uga dharagsan yahay una doonaya caalamka inay ku taageeraan sidii dib loogu soo celin lahaa ciidan Soomaaliyeed oo tayeysan oo la tartami kara ciidamada adduunka isla markaana sharaftii iyo karaamada shacabka Soomaaliyeed dib u soo celin kara. sidoo kale qorshaha dawladda horgeysay wuxuu ahaa dhanka garsoorka iyo cadaaladda sidii loo horumarin lahaa oo ummaddu ay u baahan tahay cadaalad degdeg ah oo kalsooni siisa. midda saddexaad waxay ahayd arrimaha dhaqaalaha oo dawladdu in muddo ku holaneed sidii dib u habeen loogu sameyn lahaa kalsooni looga kasban lahaa caalamka iyo shacabka Soomaaliyeed iyadana qorshayaasheedii la soo bandhigay. marka waxaan rajaynaynaa in caalamku ay ka dhabeeyaan ballanqaadyadii halkan ka sameeyeen inay dawladdu ku taageeraan qorshayaasheeda oo aan filayno inay si fiican maaragtay u hirgelin doonto.
maxaa kamid ah waxyaabihii wadamadii ka soo qayb galay shirka ay dawladda Soomaaliya u ballan qaadeen?
runtii aad iyo aad bay u soo dhaweeyeen ha noqoto madaxweynayaashii goobta ka hadlay sida madaxweyne Uhuru Kenyatta, madaxweyne Ismaaciil Cumar Geele, madaxweyne Museveni, ra'iisul wasaaraha Ethiopia, ra'iisul wasaaraha Ingiriiska, madaxweynaha dhammaan waxa moodaa in laga wada sinaa inay maanta tahay waqtigii Soomaaliya ay ka baxday marxaladii colaadda iyo dhibka diyaarna u tahay inay marxalad cusub gasho marxaladaas cusubna u baahan tahay beesha caalamku inay ku taageeraan. marka waxaan rajaynaynaa shirkan inuu ka duwan yahay shirarkii hore soomaalidana ay aad iyo aad uga faa'iidi doonto
ma jiraan wax rasmi ah oo dhaqaale ah oo loo ballan qaaday dawladda Soomaaliya si ay qaybaheeda kala duwan ay ugu hesho wax u fududeeya ma jirta wax dhaqaale oo rasmi ah oo dawladihii shirka soo qayb galay ay dawladda Soomaaliya u ballan qaadeen
waa jirtaa dawladda Ingiriiska oo kala ballan qaadyo fara badan bay samaysay iyadoo ka codsatay dawladaha kalena inay maaragtay ballan qaadkooda fuliyaan waxa kale oo dawladihii ka soo qayb galay dhammaantood caddeeyeen dawlad walba inay ka qayb qaadanayso qorshahan dawladda ay waddo marka dhawaan ayaan ogaan doonaa maalmaha soo socda iyo usbuucyada soo socda waddan walba iyo waxa uu u talagalay Soomaaliya laakiin hadda wuxuu ahaa in beesha caalamka loo bandhigo mashaariicda iyo dawladdu waxay doonayso iyadina aad baa loo aqbalay
sidoo kale waxaa jiray shir ka horeeyay shirkan oo saaki subaxnimadii hore dhacay kaasna maxaa looga wada hadlay
shirkaas shir gaar ah buu ahaa oo loogu hadlay arrimaha gargaarka bini'aadanimo macluushii ka dhacday 2011 dalka Soomaaliya si aysan dib ugu dhicin waddanka Soomaaliya waa waddan istiraatiijiyad ah oo xeebta ugu dheer leh laba webina maraan kheyraadkiisana uu runtii yahay kheyraad maaragtay ku filan Soomaalida kaliya ma aha caalamka intiisa badan ay ka faa'iidi karaan waxa la istusay inay muhiim tahay in laga hortago in gaajo shakhsi Soomaaliyeed u dhinto iyadoo dalku uu yahay dal qani ah tiiba marka waxa la sameeyay qorshe ah mashaariic dib loogu maaragtay howlgelinayo shacabkuna ka faa'iidayo dhalinyarada shaqo u abuuraya dadkana guryahooda ku celinaya isla markaana u kaydinaya biyaha webiga iyo biyaha si ay hadhow markii biyo yaraani ay dhacdo ee dadkii meel walba joogaan uga faa'iidaystaan marka waa qorshe ballaaran oo rajaynayno in iyadana ay noqoto tii dalka dib u dhisi lahayd
ma isla gartay ciddii fulileed qorshahaasi cidda ay noqonayso ma dawladda caalamka ah mise dawladda Soomaaliya mise dad kale
shirkaas isaga waxaa runtii waday qaramada midoobay oo u soo bandhigtay beesha caalamkana aad bay u taageereen marka waxaan rajaynaynaa qaramada midoobay iyo dawladda baa ka wada shaqaynaya qorshahaas sidii loo fulin lahaa hadda waxaa dhammaatay sidii hore dawladdu in mashaariic loo keeno la iska fuliyo mashaariic walba oo dalka fulaysa wayna noqdaan kuwa dawladdu ay dalbatay kuwa dawladdu ay og tahay kuwa dawladda maaragtay keeni kara inay ogaadaan in la fuliyay iyo in kale marka caalamkuna hadda waa noo diyaar shacabka Soomaaliyeed iyo dawladduna waa diyaar horumarka la suubiyo darteedna caalamku waa noo soo jeestay marka Soomaalida laga rabaa in waxyaalaha khilaafka yaryar laga gudbo danta guud la fiiriyo dawladdiina lala shaqeeyo si ummadda shacabka Soomaaliyeed loo badbaadiyo
shirkan waxaa ka baaqsaday Somaliland marka ma lagu soo hadal qaaday sababihii keen in uga baaqsato shirkaasi
runtii shirkan shir wuxuu ahaa dawladda Soomaaliyeed looga dalbaday inay mudnaanteeda u soo bandhigto caalamka dawladda Ingiriiskana aad iyo aad baan uga mahadcelinaynaa bacdama 22 sano fowdadii ay keentay cid walba inay tiraahdo aniga lama matalo hadda wixii dhan laga baxay waxaan haysanaa dawlad Soomaaliyeed oo shacabkeedu u adeegaysa wax kasta halka ka soo baxayna shacabka Soomaaliyeed tuulo walba iyo degmo walba uu joogo faa'iido way wada gaaraysaa marka ummadda Soomaaliyeed meel kasta jooga waxaan leenahay ku kalsoonaada mas'uuliyiinta halkan ka soo qayb galay oo mas'uuliyiin Soomaaliyeed ah ay oo u daneynaya danaha shacabka
aad iyo aad ayaad u mahadsan tahay afhayeenka dawladda Soomaaliya injineer Yariso oo inaga warbixinaya qodobadii ka soo baxay shirkii maanta ka dhacay magaalada London ee loo qabtay dalka Soomaaliya aad u mahadsan injineer Maxamed Xaaji Xuseen oo kamid ah wariyaashii maanta shirkan tabinaya ayaan bal waxaan ka wareysanayaa waxyaabihii ugu muhiimsanaa ee uu arkayay shirkani in uu soo jiidasho ku lahaa isla markaana uga duwan yahay shirarkii hore
horta waxa weeye shirkani waxa uu soo jiidasho ku leeyahay sida David Cameron uu sheegayba waxa weyn Soomaaliya wadamada dariskeeda ayaan miis soo fadhiisanaa dadka Soomaaliyeedna miis baa soo fadhiisanaa waxa weyn Soomaalidu dhib bay in badan sheeganaysa wadamada dariska ama dhib ku hayaan ama dhib hayaan ku haynine iyada u tirinayeen marka wadamadii dariska oo sida Kenya iyo Ethiopia iyo Djibouti iyo Uganda wadamadii oo dhan ayaa miis loo keenay marka sidaas baa lagu wada hadlay marka waxay la tahay arintaas inay aad muhiim ugu tahay dadka Soomaalidu
laakiin Maxamed maxay kula ahayd sababta keentay in shirka intaan la eeg intaas oo madax ay ka soo qayb gashay dawladda Ingiriiska ay soo qaabiso oo haddana dalka Soomaaliya uu noqdo mid guud ahaan kaligiis looga hadlo shirka oo dhan oo dhameystiran
horta waxa weey arinta la yaab kale waa taas weeyaan taas weydiinayso waxa weey dawladdii Ingiriiska oo wadanka Soomaalida gumaysan jirtay ama qayb gumaysan jirtay oo weligoodba aan sidaas ilaa inta Soomaalidu ay burburaysay sidaas aan interest u yeelanin maxaa mar kaliya ku ku soo leexiya arrimihii Soomaalida oo ay sidan ugu wadaa marka shirkan kii koobaad shirkii labaad markaad qabato sida ay madaxda Ingiriisku ay sheegayaan anagu waxaan u qabanaynaa bay leeyihiin dhibka Soomaaliya waxaan ka yaabaynaa inuu noqdo dhibka Ingiriiska oo dhibka Soomaaliya ka socda hadda maaha uu isbedelay haddii dhibaatada Soomaalida markaas way soo bedelaysay haddii hogaamiye kooxeed ay jireen haddii ma garanaysaa qabaa'il la isku dilay haddii iminka waxay taagan tahay xilli adduunku uu ka baqayo oo dadkii Mareykanku ay ka baqayaan oo Ingiriisku ka baqayo waxa Soomaaliya ka socda hadduu sii socdo waxa weeyaan halkan London baa laga dareemi doonaa marka saas bay u macnaynayaan waxay leeyihiin dhibaatada Soomaalida waxa weeyaan in la dejiyo hadda mooyaane hadduu sidoo yahay lagu fiirsado wuxuu noqon doonaa mid caasimo fara badan oo London ay ka mid tahay Washington ay ka mid tahay laga dareemo oo laga seexan waayo
aad iyo aad ayaad mahadsan tahay Maxamed Xaaji oo kamid ah wariyaasha BBC-da isla markaana shirka maanta tabinayay
baabuurka shil galo sharciga ayaga yaqaan sharmidna ka soo habsaamin u soo sheeg easy way claim